Why did I make a film about a stand-up comedian and a stand-up comic? A lot of people may wonder because I wanted to touch on the darkness that a lot of us don't see, and that's what the story is about. The story is about that darkness of a lot of comedians. They dwell from that, they get from that, and that's what a lot of their pain and their suffering come from. So they use comedy as a force field. They sense of humor as they shield the hide and cover up the pain that society uses as a defective, um, a defense mechanism. And some of my greats, man, that I like growing up, I'm talking about like Richard Pryor. That's why I put Richard Pryor at the beginning to let everybody know that's my biggest inspiration of everybody. I even said in the film, him, Red Fox, and Eddie Murphy. That's why I put Cooper. I ain't put Red Fox in it. I should have threw Red Fox away in there, but I did. I did throw him in there with my jokes or some of the jokes that I talk about. That I share in the film with some Red Fox joints. If you follow him, so I did use this material. Um, Jim Carrey. I'm talking about like people like Robert Williams is another favorite of mine. A lot of these people I'm mentioning they had dark passes. They came from abusive households, uh, domestic violence, drug abuse, and all that. And I try to cover that in the film much as possible. And that's why I use the silhouettes in this film. The silhouettes represent shadows. So instead of me getting the characters and having characters act out, because I show a trial of my whole life in this movie from the time I was born to now. And instead of me getting actors, I thought silhouettes probably was the most potent thing to use and the most powerful thing to use to represent them shadows, which was those dark past of my life that was made up. I'm about to get into that real quick too, which was made up, but them dark shadows represent each parts of my life. Them inner demons per se. Um, in the background, if you listen real closely, I try to put in little flashes of my life that you hear in the background being incorporated. Like my abusive dad was beating me up. You hear him smacking me. You hear my abusive dad smacking my mom. You hear them two arguing. Little simple little stuff, man. That I put in there. Certain stuff I didn't put in there. I try to focus on the most important things that you got to really really pay attention in this film and use your eyes and use your ears and listen. Silhouettes. I ain't think about using silhouettes until like the middle of me making this film. I was like, I wanted to use pictures because I wanted to tell a story like it never been something that you ain't never seen before. I want you to look at it and be like, I ain't never really seen, it's like a film slash, kind of like not something like a documentary kind of, but it's really not. They're telling a story like an audio book. It's playing along, you hear my voice, and you see these figures pop up, but you don't see them fully. You just see their shadows. And I had to find these silhouettes to make the story believable, close to the way these characters in my mind looked, but also close to the way I look, which was the hardest thing of all. It was a challenge, like finding pictures close to the way I looked when I was younger, the outline of my body, the way I looked when I was younger, the little afro, even the picture I found when I supposed to be like, I think 7 or 8 years old, I believe. It's a picture that I got from my that I still have. That's in my family photo book that looked real similar to me, which was a scary, scary, real scary situation. It kind of like made me pause back, like, wow. It was like I was in another dimension or something like that. 'Cause I'm like, I found this picture of a silhouette of me that looked almost identical like me when I was like 10 years old. So I put that in there instantly. So when you watch it, it was giving me chills up my spine when I was making this film with these silhouettes and pictures because I was finding the perfect pictures and the perfect silhouettes that matched my life almost identical to my real life. And just pictures of like when I was born in '76 and just like when I was raised up in North Philly, the earliest pictures I remember of my neighborhood and stuff like that, it was giving me flashbacks, man. Of like, wow, this is really focusing to something that about to touched home just a little bit, just a little bit. And I want to talk about that, which was real in this movie and which was not. This story was like a what if story. You watch the show What If. People ain't familiar with that. It's on Disney. It's a Marvel show cartoon about different alternative stories. Like, what if Captain America wasn't the Captain America we know? What if um, Ultron would have took over? And ruled the world or whatever like that. And other stories that if you're not a Marvel person, you ain't gonna know not the what I'm talking about. The Marvel comics, you ain't gonna know what I'm talking about. But everybody has a what if story. What if they didn't meet the person that they would now? They didn't marry the person that they would now. How about they would have married, the person before they married the person they would now? How about they never got married? How about they never had kids? How about they went to college? How about they didn't went to college? How about they would have hanging around the wrong people growing up? How about if they would have went this route and this route, how they life would have wound up ending? So that's how I tell the story, a what if story of like my dad was never abusive. That wasn't true. And when my mom did break up, that was true. They did break up around the time I was 10 years old. My mom did move to North Philly. That part was true. Not a single parent, she lived as a single parent, but my dad still came to see me and was part of my life. So her moving to North Philly with just us two was fabricated. See, actually, she in real life, my mom moved to North Philly, and we it was four of us total. It was me, my oldest brother, my two sisters. We lived in a kind of like the way she lived, her siblings lived. We lived in like a 1 bedroom place. We made it work. Me and my brother shared the room, made it work. My two sisters had a room of their own. They shared. They made it work. My mom, she slept on a couch, and then later on she slept in on one of the rooms. That's just my sister that's 1 year younger than me. When she moved out, my mom took one of the beds that was in the rooms that my two sisters shared, and everything. And things just moved around slowly. When my brother moved out, he moved upstairs in the same apartment we were living in with my grandmother. He had his room up there with her. Then I had the room with myself, and every little thing like that. But I'm starting to get a little, personal in my personal way I was growing up. But that's the way that I maneuvered and grew up in the hood. And other parts in the movie that was fabricated, like me making the little kids laugh when I was younger. I always had that comic humor, that sense of humor growing up that I always emphasized, in the movie, making the little kids laugh like I used to